The views that hit the news. NRA.
Now, as government, scientists and pharmaceutical giants are rushing to find a vaccine and effective treatments for COVID-19, health activists here in Cape Town are raising concern about a lack of personal protective equipment, PPEs, for those linked to a Cape Town-based clinical trial. Research organisation TASC has been criticised for not providing participants testing the common TB vaccine to reduce COVID-19 symptoms with gloves and masks. Many of them are said to be health workers, and to discuss the ethics surrounding medical research and trials, we are now joined by the Director for the Vaccine Advocacy Resources Group, Tian Johnson. Tian, a very good morning. Thank you very much for your time. Is this correct? Those participating in the trial do not have basic gloves and masks and things like that?
Good morning. Thank you for having us. I think, yes, that's correct. So in the context of the clinical trial that is happening in Cape Town called TASC, this is a trial that is looking at the revaccination of healthcare workers with the BCG vaccine. And essentially what this trial is saying is that they don't view it as their responsibility to provide personal protective equipment to the healthcare workers as part of this trial. What we as advocates are saying is that it is absolutely essential for clinical research that is happening around COVID to ensure that the participants within this trial have every single chance at preventing COVID. And to us, and indeed to the World Health Organization, that means the provision of personal protective equipment. But also, this trial has not sufficiently, in our view, engaged communities. We know that clinical research happens within a historical context, and that context has not always put communities at the center and participants' rights at the center. So we really have to be vigilant around all of the COVID-19 research that is happening in the country to ensure that, number one, communities are engaged and participants within that research are fully protected and are aware of their rights when they participate in research.
Okay, and how exactly does this research work? Are these healthcare workers that currently, I would assume, do not have COVID-19, and we're looking at what happens if they were to contract it, whether we then discuss whether the vaccine or the BCG is going to treat it differently, going to make them less, susceptible. Talk to me about the trial itself.
Yeah, so the trial is basically looking to see if this vaccine, which is used across the globe for childhood, in infants specifically, would assist in the prevention of COVID. The reason why they're targeting healthcare workers is obviously healthcare workers have a higher degree of exposure and interaction with people with COVID. So this particular trial is going to enroll and has started enrolling healthcare workers who do not yet have COVID, basically revaccinating them, which means they would have been vaccinated in childhood with this BCG vaccine, revaccinating them and then monitoring them to see if there's any effect. So far, there has been very, very limited peer-reviewed evidence that the BCG vaccine could potentially prevent COVID. So advocates have a range of concerns about this trial relating to community engagement, relating to the provision of PPE, relating to the persistent shortages of the vaccine. What does this mean for children, where we know this BCG vaccine is effective and does work in a world where there's global and national shortages of this vaccine? So this is just one of the many trials that are currently happening that we're really deeply concerned about, and we will continue to hold to account.
Yeah, and as I understand it, that, who's overseeing all of this? Who gave the go-ahead for the trial itself, and what sort of regulation is attached to this trial?
Yes, so this particular trial is run by a company called TASC. The community engagement component of this trial is overseen by an NGO called TB Proof. Advocates across South Africa yesterday had an engagement with TB Proof to essentially hold them to account to answer fundamental questions around the engagement of participants and communities within this trial. The South African Medical Research Council has published guidelines on research, and these are constantly evolving, but really these guidelines seek to set out how participants are treated from the informed consent processes. So if you're a participant in a trial, You get taken through an informed consent procedure that explains what is the trial about, what protections can you be offered as a participant, what to expect from the trial. If the trial is successful, what do you then get? For years, advocates have been advocating to ensure that those who participate in research must be amongst the very first to access any successful product that comes out of the trial. In this particular case, this trial was approved by SAPRA, the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, headed up by Professor Helen Rees. We've raised these concerns, as you know, in our open letter as well to Professor Helen Rees, and we are calling for an urgent review of the conduct of this trial.
Thank you very much for talking to us this morning on a trial that is underway in Cape Town that is receiving some heat. The trial appeared to not have provided the participants with PPEs, according to the director of the Vaccine Advocacy Resource Group, Tian Johnson there.
The views that hit the news. NRA